Vicente Fox leaves office this week and Felipe Calderon takes his place, President Bush will be the last of the so-called three amigos. Bush, Fox, and of course Canadian Prime Minister Paul Martin were the originators of the so-called Security and Prosperity Partnership, which critics call nothing more than a North American Union. It means open borders, commerce at all costs, and by the way, without the approval of either American voters or the U.S. Congress.
Howdy, friends and subscribers. Haven't said hi in a while. Been really busy, as you probably can imagine. I think it is really odd that Barack Obama, when asked about the North American Union, the American Prosperity Bill that was signed in 2005 by President Bush, backed by Mexico and Canada government leaders, he's blissfully unaware of it, and even feigned the fact that he didn't even know what it was called. What do you call it? Like when he was asked about it, he said the North American. So check this out and tell me what you think in the comments.
That you and your wife are in the globalist CFR, which is a Council on Foreign Relations, and I'd like to know if that is true, and also I'd like to know where you stand on the North American Union, which has been confirmed recently in the press. Ron Paul actually spoke about it, and the Congress has actually spent some money on it. This North American Union involves a union much like the European Union, only with Canada, Mexico, and the United States, and the possible merging of the money system into a piece called the Amero, which would actually strip the United States of some of its sovereignty and perhaps our rights. Where do you stand on that?
Well, first of all, I'm not... The Council on Foreign Relations, I don't know if I'm an official member. I've spoken there before. It basically is just a forum where a bunch of people talk about foreign policy. And so there's nothing, there's no official membership. I don't have a card or, you know, a special handshake or anything like that. In terms of this North America, union, this has been something I know Ron Paul's talked about and people have been talking about. I have to say, with all due respect, that I see no evidence of this actually taking place. I think this has been something that has been ginned up in certain blogs and the internet. It was based partly on the fact that there's this highway being built in Texas that will facilitate more transportation and travel between Mexico and the intercontinental United States on up through Canada, and so people have perceived that this potentially means that somehow there's going to be this union like the European Union. There's no evidence that that's taking place. NAFTA helped to break down barriers of trade between those three countries, and I was opposed to NAFTA because I thought that it didn't have the labor and the environmental standards and the safety standards that would look out for U.S. workers. But I don't think that there's some conspiracy to create this one, you know, continental government between Canada and Mexico. I see no evidence of that.
Say there's too little transparency and no congressional oversight.
There's nothing wrong with neighboring governments talking to each other, synchronizing their watches to make sure they're all on the same page in the cases of emergency or on trade issues or even on the flows of goods and people. But if policies are being made that the American people might oppose or that are contrary to the law, especially as it relates to immigration, you know, they're doing something a bit more nefarious.
Critics say foreign policy elites are promoting a European-style union, erasing borders between the three countries, and eventually moving to a single North American currency called the Amero. A Commerce Department spokesman, however, denies this, quote, "There is absolutely no plan for a common currency."
watching that report tonight, for any American to think that it is acceptable for the President of the United States and this executive department of his government, his administration, our government, to proceed without the approval of Congress or a dialogue and a debate and a public voice from the people of this country is absolutely unconscionable.
Could you please explain to me why you voted to reauthorize the Patriot Act, which is the worst attack on civil rights of Americans? And we do now know that George Bush's fabricated reasons to go to war were fabricated, so we do not need the Patriot Act to keep us safe.
Let me tell you what. First, it's not actually true that the Patriot Act was the worst. Most of the problems that we have had in civil liberties were not done through the Patriot Act. They were done through executive order by George W. Bush. And that's why the first thing I will do when I'm president is call in my Attorney General and have he or she review every executive order to determine which of those have undermined civil liberties, which are unconstitutional, and I will reverse them with a stroke of a pen. And so that is actually how... That's actually how the worst abuses have occurred. That's what happened with Guantanamo. That's what happened with the warrantless wiretaps. That's what's happened with the suspension of habeas corpus. That's what's happened in terms of the rounding up of Americans of Muslim extraction. Those weren't done through the Patriot Act. Those were all done separately.